sure Jetsunma is well known to you all, but just to remind you perhaps that Jetsunma Tenzin Palmo was one of the very first Westerners to be ordained as a monastic. But the perhaps more important part for us as members of Sakyadhita is that she was responsible for setting up do you call it a nunnery?
Yeah.
Or do you call it a monastery? A nunnery, yes. Yeah. And but first I'd like to just tell everybody that in February 2008, Jetsunma was given that title, Jetsunma, which means Venerable Master. And she was given that title by His Holiness the 12th Gawan Drukpa, who's head of the Drukpa Kagyu lineage, in recognition of her spiritual achievements. That's 10 years ago. She's the founding director of the nunnery, and now is it Donyu Gatsal Ling Nunnery, as well as being now the president of Sakyadhita International. Just to remind people, Sakyadhita International, or Daughters of the Buddha, is an organisation that's been going since 1987, and its mission has been to provide support and encouragement for Buddhist women, both monastic lay. And every 2 years it holds a conference. And as Meg said, in 2019 we have the great pleasure of having that conference held for the first time in Australia. And that's partly because Sakyadhita Australia, if those of you who are not members of it, we've been going now for a couple of years, and this is our very, very first webinar. So with starting on that, I think, let's start so that we've got the time. What I want to be able to do is we've got about, I'll suggest questions to Jetsunma for about half an hour, and then after that we'll open it for questions, so you can use the button there that says raise your hand, and Meg will be able to see that as well if you want to address the question directly to Jetsunma. So just to begin, I don't know, is this too much of an open-ended question? The theme of the conference next year is New Horizons for Buddhists, particularly Buddhist women, and I think this may be too big an open-ended question, Jetsunma. What do you think? What do you see as the new horizons in Buddhism for Buddhist women, or for women?
Well, Buddhism has always been very adaptive. It's not only changed its outer aspects depending on which country it is moving to. So you get Thai Buddhism, Chinese Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism, Japanese Buddhism. Buddhism is very adaptive, right? Mm-hmm. So it takes on the culture and the ambience of wherever it moves to. So, of course, now not only geographically has it moved to another countries, in other words, to the West, but also it's moving in time.
It looks like there might be a bit of internet interference at the
21st century. And so in order to... Is it okay?
It's back now. We just lost you for a moment.
Okay.
Okay.
Are we back?
We can hear you.
Yeah.
Well, that's something. That's something. So, I mean, the challenges are how to adapt the Dharma to the kind of lifestyle which people are leading nowadays, both in the West and in Asia, in order to be of genuine benefit and relevance for people's lives, then the Dharma does need to adapt itself to this modern culture in which we're living. Because if we're just looking backwards always to how it was done in traditional settings, it's going to be all very colorful, but totally irrelevant for everyday people's lives. One thing, because, you know, the modern audience, both in Asia as well as in the West, are very different from how it used to be. People now, lay people, are highly educated and are very capable of study and practice in a way that in previous times they were not, because usually they were not very educated. And also because they are not monks living in a monastery, which is just all they have to do is study and practice. Yes. I mean, they are living a life where they have a family, they have a job, they have social life, but they still want to sincerely reap the benefits of leading a Dharma life. So that Dharma, the emphasis of the Dharma has to change to that which is genuinely of any use for people in everyday lives, not renouncing everything and going living on the top of the mountain. Yeah. And I think this is the big challenge for Buddhism, not only in the West, where it can do that because, you know, it's starting something relatively new, and it can take those parts that it wants and ignore the rest. But in Asia, this is a big, big challenge for them. Because for them, mostly they think just going to a temple and making offerings is being a good Buddhist. So, you know, modern people don't think like that.
Even modern people in Asia? Are they starting to change that too? Yes.
Yes,
What do you see as I mean, the challenge is, isn't it, is what to emphasize and what to de-emphasize in the Dharma. What do you see as the more promising changes that are already beginning, particularly for women Buddhists?
Well, obviously, the first thing is that women now, being highly educated, are much more in leadership roles than they were before. I mean, previously they were there in the background, you know, doing the cooking. Nowadays, they're out there wanting to participate, wanting to study, wanting to practice, running Dharma centers, writing Dharma books, doing research. They're very much in the foreground now, for the first time.
So what are the difficulties there in the relation to what we might call gender equality, given that this is the first time? It is really, although the research that people are doing shows that over the centuries there have been some women, haven't there? But generally not.
2, 3, 4. You can count them on your hand, you know. The boys are like the stars in the sky.
Yes. Yeah. So what do you think now are the challenges for Buddhism for, it's not the Dharma as such, is it? But for the practice of Buddhism and in addressing gender equality?
Well, I mean, of course, in the West, it's much easier, because people accept female teachers, and nowadays, you know, women are in the kind of role where they are not challenged if they are, you know, the teachers at a Dharma center, if they're running the Dharma center. I mean, a lot of female Dharma leaders have many, many male disciples, students, because they like the feminine approach. And so I don't think for them there is that much problem. The problem only comes much more in Asia, where they are still grappling with the idea that actually women might have a genuine role to play in expounding and teaching the Dharma. it is happening, but of course it's on a slightly slower pace.
Yeah.
Nuns have made a huge leap forward, you could say, in the last 20 years. But lay women are still lagging behind.
So since you began practicing yourself, you'd say there'd been a significant change for nuns.
Oh, yes, enormous. Because now they're being educated, they're learning rituals, they're doing long meditation retreats and really learning all the kind of inner teachings, which previously in most traditions was not shared with the women. Now it's opening up, you know, so for them, it's a whole revolution in what is possible. Because before, the problem is potential, that you don't have the opportunities, that's all. Yeah. I mean, beyond that, there's no difference. But if you are not given opportunities, how can you realize your potential? That's all.
It is a struggle, though, because of the wanting to respect the teachers and yet at the same time, you know, I guess, also wanting to become leaders as well. So that there's quite it's often a dilemma, I suppose, that women face in trying to develop their own potential. And one of the questions that we thought about, Jetsunma, was that I don't know whether this is happening in Asia, but certainly in the West, where there have been, in just the last 2 or 3 years, these examples have come to light of abuse of power by some of those teachers. We don't, but how might we best address that without, you know, sensationalizing it, but with real, yeah. What are your thoughts on that whole situation? That's a risk.
I mean, I think, of course, one of the problems is boundaries. Where there are no given boundaries, then people with power and authority, if they do not have genuine wisdom, tend to, you know, exploit their position. It's very discouraging that spiritual teachers are as prone to this weakness as everybody else. But just as doctors and psychiatrists and others have standards, they have ethical code which they have to obey. So likewise, spiritual teachers really should have an ethical code. You'd think they had one, but they obviously don't. And now, for example, in Dharamshala, every year, His Holiness the Dalai Lama has a meeting with the heads of all the traditions, you know, all the Tibetan traditions, the head lamas that come up, the Sakyadhita and so forth. They all meet together to discuss. And I'm told that on the agenda this year is about these cases of sexual abuse among lamas. And also for the first time, nuns are being invited as part of the audience.
Not part of the leaders.
Because they're not they're not the heads of any lineages, but at least they are there. Maybe they can ask questions. At least they are acknowledging there are nuns now, because previously women were not invited to even, you know, observe. So that is two things. One, they are now addressing the fact there is a problem with some lamas, and at the same time, they are inviting women to also participate. So, you know, slowly.
Is there a role, do you think, for Sakyadhita in this process?
Oh, I think very much, because we are giving a platform for women to express how it feels for them as Buddhist women within an environment which is totally supportive and sympathetic and understands what they're saying, because they're talking to other women. So although we don't wish to end up being, you know, on the edge and tremendously controversial, at the same time, we also do not want to be sweeping everything under the carpet, as has been done before, you know?
Yeah. It's critical that we, isn't it? Yeah. It's really important that we find creative ways and positive ways to bring it to light and try and develop
and work out solutions, you know, which will, yeah, you know, so this time in Sakyadhita in the next June, one of the panels will be on this question of ethical conduct among spiritual teachers and so forth, because it has to be addressed.
And who better to address it than the women who've seen it from many angles, really, both in the West and in Asia too, you know, and just to see the dimensions of the problem as well. So it's terrific that we're going to be able to do that. And another kind of area of question was that we thought of, Jetsunma, was in relation to, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. Was the question about the huge popularity now of mindfulness, particularly the secularization of mindfulness, especially we know in Western communities, and we wondered how you might regard that.
Well, you know, I think on the whole, if human beings can learn to be mindful, that's a good thing. And I don't think it's necessary that it has to come with all the other Buddhist trimmings. To learn how to be in control of your own mind, to learn how to become more aware, more centered, is a wonderful accomplishment. And plus, you know, once they Google mindfulness, then they'll discover it's actually a practice.
So you're not concerned about it being commercialized or...
I mean, everything gets commercialized, but if it is helpful, then it's good.
Okay.
I mean, you know, if it helps people, then, you know, why not? You know, they are starting to teach it in schools, in offices, in factories, in the military. You know, anything that will help is a good thing. I mean, the Buddha said, you know, how extraordinarily helpful being mindful was. And it's true. It's a great gift that the Buddha gave to the world.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes. So, maybe I might what do you... one of the things we've been thinking about as well, and particularly for us in Australia, I guess, where we have many different Buddhist communities from, you know, pretty much all the possible lineages, as well as many of the, you know, lay communities as well. Or I suppose that's the way to describe it. But we've thought about, particularly in our Sakyadhita Australia, you know, how can we build connections between those who are born into Buddhist communities and those who come to the Dharma, you know, as teenagers or adults. And one of our thoughts has been, how do we make how can we build connections between those, amongst those communities, or should we?
Well, I think this is one of our hopes with this Sakyadhita conference, that it will bring together these various traditional groups like Chinese and Koreans, Vietnamese, Sri Lankans, and so forth, along with the Anglo Buddhists, you know, the neo-Buddhists of the Western community, so that they can all meet each other, recognize under all the outer differences, we're all women and we're all following the Buddha Dharma. Isn't that wonderful? In its many varieties, you know? One of the beauties of Sakyadhita is how totally non-sectarian it is. Nobody is pushing their own agenda. It really is just Buddhist women coming together and enjoying each other and appreciating the gift of the Dharma. So what you need to make is some events and invite people to events, you know, so they can meet each other.
This one, we're not sure how the webinar works, but this might be the beginning of such a possibility.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. How to do that. Okay. Okay. For yourself, Jetsunma, do you have any particular what particular areas or issues are you concerned about at this time as a Buddhist?
Well, you know, in the beginning, I was concerned about nuns from the Himalayan regions, you know, like the Tibetans and the Bhutanese and Kinuris, Ladakis, and so forth. And so my main emphasis was on trying, you know, modestly to also help in the movement to get them better educated, better trained, and raise their whole status in the Buddhist community among the Tibetans, you know, which has happened now. I mean, not just in our nunnery, but in other nunneries also. Nuns are getting educated, they're getting much more confidence in themselves. As you may know, now there are geshe-mas and there are kenmos and so forth. So their whole vision of themselves has completely transformed, and also their relationship with the monks and with the lay people. So they're doing fine. They're doing well. They're going on, and they're really doing excellently. I have no fault with them. So now my concern is with what we are calling the non-Himalayan nuns, which means both Westerners and other Asians like Koreans and Taiwanese who get ordained into the Tibetan order and then discover that actually there is no training, there is no support, either material or spiritual. You're each one on your own, more or less. Even if you're part of an organization, you're not physically, financially supported. And so people feel very adrift often, and they've given up everything, you know, often highly educated women with, you know, profession behind them and a lot of life experience, so much to offer if they were only taken seriously and trained. And yet there's nothing for them, you know. So this is our concern now, how to help as much as we can to, you know, just support them and recognize that, you know, that what they are doing has some real significance, and if they were trained properly, could really be a great benefit for many people. Yeah. I mean, they could become teachers, and they could, you know, do many things if they were taken seriously. Yeah. So this is my concern now. It's hard. And so many of my friends, long-time nuns, sometimes 20 years or more, they're all disrobing.
Yes,
because they get disheartened, you know. Yes. It's not that they give up the Dharma, but they give up being a nun. They don't fit in the West. They don't fit in Tibetan communities. Where do they fit? Nowhere, you know. And they get tired of being misfits. Yeah.
And that, yes, and it's a waste, isn't it, really? That's a waste for everybody.
Really, you know, and I find it very sad that after all these many, many years, the lamas still don't really take them very seriously. I don't know why.
How, yes, and of course the question is how to change that, isn't it? But many minds are putting effort into changing that. Including your work as well, which is really important in that area. Yeah. And I guess that brings me to really the last. Well, I've sort of been asking you a little bit about the role of Sakyadhita. We've been talking about that a little bit along the way, haven't we? Really. Is there anything else you want to say directly to that before we throw it open? Do you think?
I would like to say that Sakyadhita is unique. There is no other organization like it. You know, it is a platform for Buddhist women of all traditions, monastic and lay, to come together and share together and have fun together. I mean, one of the points of the Sakyadhita conference is that it's such fun. Everybody loves it. And of course, even monks come. Ajahn Brahm and Sujato loved it. They said they never had so much fun for a long time. And, you know, sometimes women bring their husbands. It's not anti-male. It's just, you know, supportive for the feminine. And the women have a chance to talk about what Buddhism means for them as women in the various traditions, in the various Asian countries, as well as from the West. There's nowhere else where that is given so much prominence. And as I said, the fact that it is so non-sectarian, nobody's promoting their own lineage or their own tradition. Everybody's practicing Theravada meditation, Mahayana meditation, Tibetan meditation. They're all enjoying it all so much. And it's broadening their view of what the Buddha Dharma is all about, you know. So I think it's a wonderful, wonderful organization. And that's why I stay with it, you know. I mean, fantastic. And every conference is different because it's in a different Buddhist, in a different Asian country and takes on the feel and the culture of that country. It's so interesting. And so we're really looking forward to Australia. I mean, the Asians are very excited about coming and seeing how Buddhism is in a Western country. So they've only seen it how it is in various Asian countries.
Yes.
They really wanted to come to Australia because they were curious about how the Dharma has assimilated itself in the West. So, of course, Australia was the closest. And also because you have so many other traditional Buddhist groups here too, it was a perfect opportunity for everybody to meet together and appreciate each other. So, yes, I mean, I do urge people, especially in Australia, to please attend this very, very unique conference. It's really a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to meet with Buddhists from throughout the world. Very, very talented women.
Yes, yes. Good note. Yes, indeed. I totally agree. Meg, can you hear us?
Yes, I can, Suzanne. So just for people's reference, I've typed in the chat function the conference website. So it's www.sakyadhita2019.org.au, but it's there in the chat. And I've also typed in Sakyadhita Australia's website and noticed our Facebook page as well.
So, Meg, would you be the one to field the questions? I think we can open it up to questions now.
Yep, very happy to do so. So if people, you should be able to unmute yourself, either the bottom left-hand side, if you're on a laptop or computer, or top if you're on an iPad, you should be able to do your own unmute and video. If you're not confident or having problems with that, I'm happy to do it from my end. Just type in the chat box and I can do that from my end. So perhaps if we open it up for the first question to Jetsunma. Surely we're not shy.
Okay, I've got a question.
Fabulous. Perhaps if you'd just like to introduce yourself briefly.
Hello, Jetsunma. My name is Rima. And
hello, Rima.
Hello. How wonderful, how wonderful, how wonderful. Thank you for being here tonight. I just wanted to return to early in the discussion where you mentioned changing emphasis of Dharma teachings to keep it relevant and to the modern world and the modern lifestyle that we've developed. I wondered if you'd like to expand on that, please.
I've lost.
Shall I repeat?
Yeah, yes, please, Rima, if you can. That would be great.
What was the question? I lost the question, sorry.
I just wanted to say thank you for coming tonight.
Yeah.
My name is Rima. The question is the changing emphasis of Dharma teachings to Buddhism relevant in the modern world. Could you elaborate on the emphasis that you see needed to change, or aspects of the...
Well, I mean, the point is that traditionally the main practitioners were the monks. And because, of course, they're the professionals, right? They have the time and the interest to be the scholars and to go in for longer meditational practices and so forth. So they were the professionals. And the lay people's role in Asian countries was mostly to support the monks so that they had the liberty to be able to just study and practice, and in some circumstances to also teach or write books. But nowadays that is very much changing. I mean, when even in Asia, what to speak of in the West, the audience is, 97% lay. And amongst that, of course, probably 60 or 70% female, and they don't just want to be in the role of, supporting the monks while they're doing the work. They want to do the work. They want to study. They want to practice. They want to use their daily life as a Dharma practice. And so the emphasis, which previously had been on renunciation and going off into remote areas and so forth, especially in Tibetan tradition, is no longer so relevant for ordinary people. They want to say, what can the Dharma do for me in my daily life, with my family, with my colleagues, with the problems which are coming up in the world, with these difficulties which we are experiencing together in ecology and in politics and in finance and in everything. How can the Dharma help in this situation? And this is what, the Dharma can help. I mean, the Dharma is wonderful, but it has to be shown, how it can be of use for people, how people can take it and use it. Otherwise, it becomes irrelevant. And in Asia, this is especially so because of the emphasis on just supporting monks and going to the temple. Now people have to know what actually is the Dharma. I have so much devotion, but what do I have devotion to? Especially as the younger people become educated, then they also they think, I am not interested in going to temples and supporting monks. What can the Dharma do for me? And unless you answer that, then they lose interest.
Indeed. And as you say, Tenzin Palmo, very, very relevant to our daily living and our opportunities to practice non-violence within and without, and find peaceful solutions to the challenges arising in our world.
Which the Dharma can do if it's taught skillfully.
Indeed.
I mean, it's so, what's the word? It's just so practical.
Indeed.
But people know have to be taught how to practice.
Indeed. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Next question. And apologies that it seems that you may not be able to necessarily turn your cameras on. So my apologies, but certainly you're able to unmute yourself at your end, or just sing out if you wanted me to do it from my end. Such an amazing opportunity for us to have Jetsunma live, so it'd be great to ask a question. Looks like, Gosha, would you like to ask a question? Would you like me to unmute you, or are you able to unmute yourself?
You need to unmute me.
Yes, you're fine to go, Gosha.
Thank you, Jetsunma Palmo, for this opportunity. When I'm traveling, visiting friends in Australia, I often say to them, they ask me, do you teach? I said, well, no, not really. I do kitchen sink Dharma. So I go to people's homes and we just talk about how the Dharma fits in with what we do. But there's always, I think, still this little bit of difficulty with not so much translation, but making things relevant in daily life. So I would really appreciate this opportunity that Sakyadhita now has of making this more relevant in our day-to-day lives. And myself as a monastic, I still have family commitments, and I have a little place of my own where I stay sometimes. So the daily commitments and responsibilities, we all share those. So and yourself, you're running a nunnery. I'm sure there's plenty of kitchen sink Dharma happens in nunnery as well. I'm not sure that at this point that there's one thing pressing, but could you perhaps say a little bit more about that? I guess it's an integration question that I'm asking. Just any direct advice on that?
I mean, I think one thing is that, when people in the West, not in Asia, but in the West, when people say Buddhism, they immediately have the idea of somebody sitting in meditation. And most of the Dharma centers actually emphasize, you have Vipassana, you have Zen, you have Tibetan style, but meditation is very much combined in people's mind with the idea of Buddhism. But in fact, of course, in Asia, not that many people actually meditate, including monks. But there are all these other qualities of the heart which need developing. I mean, even if we just take the paramita, the 6 qualities needed for Buddhahood, you have, generosity for a start. This is very big in Asia. The Asians know how to be generous. Extraordinary how much they are rejoiced in giving and sharing. And then, of course, ethical conduct, being careful not to use anything physically or verbally to cause harm to any other being. And then patience, tolerance, that's a wonderful one to practice in daily life. How to not react by becoming angry and aggressive or upset or irritable, because of other people and not being so helpful to us and causing problems. How to recognize that they are actually our benefactors because they are teaching us how to be more tolerant and develop our forbearance. And, the general sense of being kind, being compassionate, being more mindful, being genuinely cultivating awareness under as much circumstance as we can manage. There's so much we can do. It doesn't take time. It just takes that attitude that everyone we meet and every circumstance we meet with is, in that moment, our Dharma practice. How to respond skillfully. Then every day is Dharma day, isn't it? And this needs to be remembered, all these Lojong teachings and so forth. That aspect of the Dharma, of recognizing that everything which we do and say, and especially think, can be turned into a practice. Then life has some meaning, And people will think, oh, you're a nice person after all, maybe.
Thank you, Jetsunma.
You know this already, my dear. But people need to be reminded of it, you know, because otherwise it all becomes very intellectual or very theoretical. But actually the Dharma is extremely practical.
Okay.
We have a question from Jackie. Jackie, if you'd like to unmute yourself, and then there's one from Emma following Jackie. Okay, Jackie, I'm just trying from my end again.
Oh, hello. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, lovely. Thank you. Yeah, I was trying to get the video to work, but that doesn't seem to be working. Never mind. Do you think, Jetsunma, that because in the West, because Buddhism is sort of new to the West, we sort of have a chance to shape it more ourselves as women, because we don't have so much sort of traditional baggage in a way, and then we can sort of use that in a way to hopefully influence Buddhism in the East as well through our own approach. Oh, sorry, I can't. I think I've lost you.
No, you haven't. Can you hear me?
I can. Yeah, I can hear you now. Yep.
Okay. Well, you know, of course, every country that the Buddha Dharma traveled to outside of India, it took on the coloring and culture of that country, as I said at the beginning. So you have Chinese Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism, Thai Buddhism, and so forth. And undoubtedly, as it's come to the West already, because everything is speeding up, it's taken on a certain flavor that is necessary for the West, which the West needs. For example, the much larger input from women. I mean, in the Dharma circles, the majority are the women. And there are some very well-known female teachers who are very respected by everybody. So the input of women is one big change which is happening now in these modern times. And also, I think what I would call the courtship, not exactly marriage yet, but courtship of psychology and Buddhism.
Yes.
Many prominent Western Buddhist teachers, especially meditation teachers, are also psychotherapists.
Yes.
And so that is very interesting. And Buddhism is having its input on psychology. Psychology is also helping, especially with people who have more serious mental problems, to deal with that in order to prepare them to be able to practice seriously, especially meditation. I mean, the two can really benefit each other.
Yes,
and then also, I would say, what else is they got? The role of lay people nowadays, as I said, which is so much more prominent than in traditional circles, where everything was more or less run by the monks. Nowadays, most of the prominent teachers are not monks. They are lay people with families and often with careers. And so therefore the emphasis shifts again because of making the Dharma relevant and useful for people in their lay life. As I said, not just, supporting the monks, but in themselves wanting to be genuine practitioners and scholars and so forth. And then also the I would say social activity, and not enough to just sit on your cushion and think, may all beings be well and happy. We should go out and do something about that.
Yes. And it seems like we do have, sorry.
Yes.
And it seems like we do have to really jump up and down a lot to our gentlemen Buddhist colleagues and say, hey, over here we are. And we can work together as women and support each other and support each other's practice and grow in our practice together. But we're also sort of bumping our heads against this patriarchal structure that's in place.
I wouldn't think in the West that was such a problem. In Asia, of course, it is much more a relevant problem because indeed there is a huge patriarchy. I think the important thing which you said there was that the women should support each other. Yes. And that is the real crux of the matter. If women support each other, then they have their own energy, their own power. But when they are only handing it always to the patriarchal system, then they become disempowered.
Yes, yes. And, you know, it's really interesting because, you know, Tibetan Buddhism became so huge in the West. And so that brought with it that sort of patriarchal structure and, you know, the reliance on a Lama, not only them being male, but also just being Tibetan in and of itself, that seems more legit to us. We take it more seriously.
Well, it's so much more exotic and esoteric than, you know, some Aussie, you know, teacher, right? Especially a female.
Yeah, that's right. And so if we can support each other, you know, then it doesn't matter how much we get sidelined, how much women will get sidelined. If we support each other, then that's enough. You know, we can be teachers to each other.
Well, we should appreciate and respect each other. You know, I mean, if we can do that, then that's, as you say, that's enough. This is why Sakyadhita is really good, because it is about the feminine energy, the feminine input, the feminine power, without being anti anybody. You know, it's not that we're anti-men. We're just very supportive of the female, which is usually underappreciated.
Yes, and there's a huge hunger amongst women for Buddhist teachings.
Yes, well, most of the audience are female. If you took the women out, there would be the Lama sitting on his throne to an almost empty hall, you know, and who would make him his cup of tea, you know? So, of course, the women are important.
Right. Oh. So in a way, we have to learn to take each other seriously.
Well, this has always been our weakness, is that we have always handed the power to the males. And if we cannot, you know, really give genuine appreciation to each other, then, of course, you know, we're going to remain disempowered.
Yes, yes.
And then there is no balance. The poor problem is a lack of balance. It's not that we want women should take over the world, but that we should be in balance with the male energy. The male energy is fine, but it needs the other side to balance it out. And the problem is that even in Buddhist circles, that doesn't happen. So it's still unbalanced. The Buddha always talked about the fourfold Sangha. For him, the fourfold Sangha was the crux of the flourishing of the Dharma. And the fourfold Sangha, of course, are monks, nuns, laymen, laywomen.
Right.
So both genders and monastics and lay. He always, again, he never just said only the monks should study and practice. He always said when the fourfold Sangha is studying, practicing, and propagating the Dharma, then the Dharma will flourish and it will be a genuine Buddhist country. So this is the weakness of Buddhism in Asia. It's always that it's got unbalanced in favor of the monks. And it's interesting now that it's maybe getting unbalanced in favor of only laity with very few in the West, with very little understanding of the monastic life. So we have to be sure to keep it balanced now. Monastic and lay, male and female, everybody working together.
Yeah, well, how to get the monastic, you know, life actually functioning well in the West is another thing.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jackie. We may have to move on. There's 3 people waiting for a question.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jackie. Apologies to everyone that cameras don't seem to be working for participants, and apologies also if I'm missing components of names and obviously the honorifics of venerables, because I'm just going off the name that appears that comes up listed. So apologies if I'm getting names incorrect. But the next question is from Emma. She has asked, do you think women suffer from different delusions than men, or are we essentially the same?
Well, if by delusions you mean the afflictive emotions, I would say we're pretty much on par. I mean, some people have more greed or lust, some people have more anger, some people are more deluded, and so forth. But, you know, I don't think it just matters male or female. It's the human condition. I think it's very important to remember that we all have Buddha nature. Buddha nature has no gender. Of course, each women have their own problems and men have their own problems, as we all know. I mean, you know, and they can be rather different. But the essential poisons of our emotions are pretty much, yeah, genderless. I mean, everybody has anger and greed and delusion.
Thank you, Jetsunma. The next question is from S. Dibley, and I'm sure there's a first name that goes with that S, so again, my apologies. But she says, Jetsunma, thank you for sharing your time with us. Do you think we could have a regular video conference from yourself, or perhaps a nun from your nunnery, to offer regular Tibetan teachings, as this is a great way to feel connected and learn?
Well, you know, you have so many teachers already in Australia, so, you know, you don't need me. And also, you know, there are so many wonderful talks and teachings that you can download nowadays from the internet. I mean, the internet does have its uses. And one is that you can have really top teachers, their teachings very immediately. So you certainly don't need me.
I think some would beg to differ, Jetsunma.
No.
Our
also,
next
I travel a lot, you know, so it's very difficult.
Next question is from Lilia. I'm just going to try and unmute. Right, you should be right now.
I'm here, yes. Thank you so much, Jetsunma, for speaking with all of us. My question has to do with Western women living the Vinaya, and how, with respect, I ask this question, how practical or realistic is it for women in the West, nuns in the West, monastics, to live the Vinaya?
Well, I mean, of course, the Vinaya was created 2,500 years ago,
right,
for conditions in India at that time. And so obviously, even in very devout Buddhist countries, certain rules in the Vinaya are ignored. For example, there is actually a rule saying that one is not allowed to travel on a vehicle unless one is extremely old or sick.
Right.
And even in Thailand, monks are all on the buses and trains and planes. I mean, everybody ignores that. The only people who keep that rule are the Jains. And so there are a number of rules like that. You're not supposed to, unless it's the rainy season, bathe more than once a month or something. I mean, you know, a lot of rules which they just ignored. Also, a lot of the rules about the robes, etc., because in those days getting material was very difficult.
Right.
So a lot of rules are just quietly ignored. I think that the basic rules are still very beneficial, just as a guideline. And but you know, I mean, like the rule about not touching money.
Right.
is only observed in very strict Theravada centers. I mean, the Mahayanas nuns don't keep that rule. The Tibetan nuns don't even think about it. It's just not, But the thing, like the rule about not, making yourself up or wearing jewelry or something, obviously that is easy to keep.
Right.
And you just have to adapt, but make a balance between not being too loose and not being too tight. So that you do remind yourself that you are a monastic. For example, I myself don't eat after midday, or at least after lunch. Not because I couldn't, but just simply to remind myself that I have indeed got 348 rules, most of which I'm not keeping. So at least I can keep that one.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I just wonder about that because in consideration of those Western women who are monastics, those of us who are and try our best, I often wonder, is it simply to remain as an ideal to aspire toward, or is there some intelligence has to be applied in terms of where you are and a balance, so to speak?
So which rules do you find difficult?
Oh, they're irrelevant. Is that what?
Irrelevant, yeah, or irrelevant that you think, well, why am I bothering to keep this?
Oh, I think the ones that you've just mentioned, and then also, sometimes it's not realistic not to eat after midday. For example, you just pointed that out. And also something about music, about playing music and dancing and all of this kind of course, I understand that. I don't know. I often wonder. I do not live by the Vinaya strictly. So, but I know some Western women who are trying to do that and are having some problems trying to balance their lives in the West, and also getting support in terms of trying to live that, and also but finding it difficult as well.
It is difficult. And I mean, the poor thing is that monastics were supposed to live within monastic communities.
Exactly.
I mean, for example, our nunnery, most of these rules keep themselves, even if the nuns don't know what they are. Because they're living together as a monastic community, they naturally observe the rules. Because, that's part of their communal living. So when one is living by oneself or in a lay community or surrounded by lay people, then it becomes much more of a challenge, there's no doubt. And one doesn't know what the Buddha would have made of it all. I mean, if he was now, who knows what rules he would have made or what rules he would have discarded. It also is important to remember that at the end, just before he went into Mahaparinirvana, he said to Ananda that, we've got too many rules and we should, discard most of the rules and just keep the important ones. And of course, as you know, I mean, Ananda forgot to ask him which he considered to be important and which he considered not. And so when they had the conference of all the monks coming together to codify the sutras, then they didn't know what the Buddha meant by the important ones and the not important ones. And to be safe, they decided to keep them all.
Exactly right.
But, I mean, obviously, even the Buddha himself thought it was all getting a bit too much.
Right.
In fact, there's somewhere else where he says to his, probably to Shariputra and Moggallana, do you remember when we were all arahats and we had no rules and everybody kept perfect conduct? And now we have so many rules and everybody's busy breaking them.
Right.
clearly he understood there was a problem. So we don't know what rules he would have made up now. I mean, probably something to do with computers and smartphones and, you know.
Distraction.
Distraction. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I think the important thing with the rules is to understand the intention behind them.
Yes.
Why did the Buddha say not to do this or do that? What was the reason for that? You know, and if it seems reasonable, then to observe that. And if you can say, well, now that doesn't pertain anymore, then just put it aside.
Yeah.
But what, you know, the Vinaya is not supposed to be something comfortable.
No, of course. Yes.
You know, we're not trying to adapt the Vinaya to us. We're trying to adapt ourselves to the Vinaya.
Totally. Yes.
Thank you. We have one last question and then just a couple of comments from people. But the last question, I'll just try and, it's Jeannie from Brazil. I hope I've pronounced that right, Jeannie. I'm going to try and, you are now unmuted.
Yes. Hi, Jetsunma. Thank you so much for your time. Well, in the West, there are so many women participating in the Buddhist centers. And it may appear we don't have any of these problems with the men, but probably we do. Which forms do you think this patriarchal structure assume in the West?
Which what?
Which forms? How this patriarchal structure works in the West? How do you see this? Which type of problems are you not seeing?
I mean, it's what we said before, that if women support each other, what can the men do? The reason why the men have all the power is because we give them the power. If we shared the power a little bit more equitably, then, you know, they would have to likewise, you know, accommodate themselves. But if women give the power to the men and the authority, then, and do not give like authority and respect and appreciation to each other, then of course there's patriarchy will carry on forever. It's up to the women, not up to the men.
Yeah, I know. But what I mean is that it seems that we don't have these problems in the West because many women are participating already. How do you see which type of forms this patriarchal structure has in the West? What do you see? Because we may not see, you know.
I think it's patriarchal systems, except where you get a Dharma center where most of the students are female and there is the male leader, the male teacher, then that can sometimes be, depending on the teacher, it can be end up as you know, again, a very power hungry situation, you know, the cock in the hen yard. It depends on the teacher. I mean, some teachers, they genuinely are not discriminating male or female, but others really enjoy having all these adoring female students around them, and even might, you know, cross the boundaries of ethical conduct on that account. I mean, this has always been the problem with all this sexual abuse scandals, is that, you know, the male authority was given total power and the women did not in any way discriminate. And so as a result, there, you know, it creates a situation which is very unequal, which is not a good thing. But it could happen also, I guess, but less likely in a situation where the main teacher is a female. And I mean, most male teachers are magnificent and not taking advantage of their situation at all. But the temptation is always there towards, power and territory and control and so forth.
Yeah.
So
nice. Yeah. Thank you so much, dear Jetsunma. I love you.
Thank you, Ginny. I'll read out just to close us off, some of the notes from people, Jetsunma, who are wanting to pass on their thanks. So we have from Lisa, thank you so much, Jetsunma. Always wonderful to hear your words and wisdom, sending metta. From Nicole, thank you so much, Jetsunma. Such a clear and refreshing conversation full of wisdom. From Anna, this is so awesome to be able to have this discussion online. Thank you to the organisers, and thank you, Jetsunma Tenzin Palmo, for your time and inspiration. I'm now really looking forward to the conference.
Good. Come to the conference, ladies. Come to the conference.
We also have, thank you so much for your time, which was agreed with by 3 others. And one last message from a lady who was meeting us from Italy, I believe. I'm just trying to find her. Yes, here we go. Oh, sorry, I'm trying to find that last message. And there's a couple more recent ones. Yes, thank you very much, Jetsunma. Love and gratitude from Italy. And a couple of final ones. Thank you, organisers. A yay with exclamation marks. Thank you for the teachings, Jetsunma. It's refreshing to listen about women helping each other in such a difficult time. See you in June. Thank you, Jetsunma, and thank you, Sakyadhita Australia. Thank you so much, Jetsunma, and to the organisers of this webinar. Wonderful idea, and thank you for a lovely event. So I will hand back now to Suzanne just for any final closing comments, and thank you to everybody. And again, thank you for the magnificent donations that we'll put towards sponsoring nun and lay person to attend the conference in June. Again, just to remind you of the conference website, www.sakyadhita2019.org.au. It would be fabulous to see Jetsunma in the real live flesh for the week. All other people as well. So Suzanne, if you just unmute, back over to you.
Yeah, okay. I'm muted. I'm unmuted by the host. Good.
Yes.
All right. Isn't this fabulous? I can only reiterate, Jetsunma, how fabulous it's been, and it worked. Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah,
Sakyadhita is truly international. And I think that's the thing that's come through really strongly, isn't it? Is the value of Sakyadhita that's made this platform possible. So with much gratitude and thank you. And look, thanks to everybody else as well who've managed to connect. Special thanks to Meg, who's really been the main force of getting this going, but also to the other members on our Sakyadhita Australia executive who contributed to getting this happening as well. And as Meg said, not to forget, this has been recorded. So if you'd like to be able to look at it again and listen to Jetsunma, just to be able to remember, it'll be available online, as Meg has said. So what a fabulous thing. So that's terrific. I'm going to be saying good night. I think it's good afternoon to you, Jetsunma, and all wonderful wishes. Hope to see all of you who've been here tonight. Hope to see you all next year in the Blue Mountains in the last week of June. All right, good night.
Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you, Meg. Thank you, everybody, for putting this on. And thank you for all your questions. And thank you. May you all be very, very well and happy.
Yeah. It's great, isn't it? Yeah, okay. Good night.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.